All right, welcome. My name is Dr. Jessica Rick, and I am a faculty member in the Department of Communication Studies. I am going to be the moderator of this panel. So we're going to hear a lot of different perspectives to graduate studies. We all have very different experiences. So I'm going to share my story briefly to begin. I am originally from a small town in North Dakota. And so after, Sara, we got that Dakota connection. After my undergraduate degree, I was living in Fargo, North Dakota, working at Microsoft. And I hated my job. Microsoft is a great company. I hated my job. I was copying and pasting 40 hours a week, issuing refunds to companies. It was not a very fun and glamorous job. And I knew something needed to change. So I did what you shouldn't do for grad school for my master's program. Is I, on a whim, applied to North Dakota State University for their degree in communication. And I thought I would just be going part-time. I just knew I needed something different. But when I submitted my application, I was offered an assistantship to teach public speaking. And so in communication, it's really common for graduate students to teach public speaking, and then I don't have to pay for I didn't have to pay for my tuition. So I taught 2 sections of public speaking. They paid my tuition, and then they gave me a small stipend. So what my graduate program looked like in my master's degree is I was teaching 2 classes of public speaking. I was taking 2 classes a semester. Typically in grad school, although it's not a rule of thumb, typically your classes meet 1 day a week. Depending on the program, sometimes you might meet during the days. North Dakota State is primarily an at-night program. So all my classes were at night because a lot of my classmates were working full-time. But I was a full-time grad student, but to help supplement my income, I was also working multiple jobs to kind of make ends meet. My graduate stipend was not a lot. It was only $8,000. So I only got $8,000 a year, which for those of you who pay your bills know that gets you nowhere. And so I was working part-time as a receptionist at a medical facility. And then I was coaching gymnastics on the weekends. And so my master's program couldn't have been more different than my PhD program. My master's program, on a whim, I applied to one school. For my PhD program, I spent months researching different programs. I ended up applying to 3 different schools based on my areas of research. And so when you're applying for a PhD program, it's a little different because your research matters a lot more, or what area it is that you want to study matters a lot more for your PhD. And so I knew I wanted to study organizational communication, and specifically identity within organizations. And so my area of expertise is identity within organizations. I applied to Purdue, I applied to University of Missouri, and I applied to North Dakota State. And I ended up choosing University of Missouri. I felt I had a strong connection with who my advisor was going to be. And so in that program, my first 2 years, I was teaching public speaking again, right? So I didn't have to pay my tuition. I was teaching 2 sections of public speaking. I was taking 3 classes a semester. And then PhD programs are in the social sciences, which is my area, is all about the research. So I was doing a lot of research, doing my own studies, writing papers. And then my last 2 years, I took my comprehensive exams and completed my final research project or my dissertation. Classes are different in grad school than they are in undergrad. There is way more reading, like way more reading. Papers are significantly longer, and there's very little lecture. Most of the classes are discussion. At least in my field and the classes that I took and the classes that I teach in our master's program, they're all discussion, right? So if you are in one of my graduate classes, I expect you have read what I assigned, and it probably is over 100 pages a week. It's it's a lot of reading, but I give you tips and tricks on how to speed up reading, right? I don't expect you to read things word for word. Nobody has time for that. But it's much more discussion based, right? So I don't really lecture. And so that was my first year as a master's student. That was a hard adjustment of like, wait, you don't let like, I'm expected just to know what I read. Like I didn't understand that reading. And everyone has that same experience of like, right? Sometimes you just walk into a classroom that you're like, I don't know what I just read. I read it. I don't understand it. Can we talk about it? And that's the great thing about grad school is that you just talk about things and you think about things. And I know I love teaching in our master's program. I look forward to teaching whenever I can because it's a very different experience than undergrad. And so with that, I will pass it along.
Everyone, my name is Kirsten Hochgesang, and I am a grad student here at the University of Southern Indiana. And so unfortunately, I was not able to be with you live today, but I did want to go ahead and record this video to share my experience as a grad student here at USI. So I am a member of the Masters of Arts in Communications program, and I really enjoyed it. I am about to graduate. I'm going to graduate in May of this year, so super excited to finally have my master's degree. But as far as kind of my experience goes here in the MAC program, I did take at most 6 credit hours at one time. I am also an employee here at the University of Southern Indiana, and so that is actually the limit that I had. And honestly, 6 credit hours was plenty because I was working full-time. I still am working full-time and taking graduate courses, so whether that's at night or working on it on the weekends, whatever it may be, 6 credit hours was the most that I could handle. And a lot of semesters I took only 1 course, and sometimes that was a lot too. So it kind of just depends on what's going on at work in that time period. But as far as like how much work it actually involved as far as the coursework goes, again, it kind of depends on the class. I would definitely say that having time at night and on the weekends was plenty of time to do the work. But, you know, some things take longer than others as far as, you know, doing a paper or just doing, you know, a discussion board, whatever it may be. It just kind of depends. And so I would definitely try to plan out my time as far as what I would do. Sundays were good days for that. So yeah, how long I was in the program. So this is my 3rd year, and I will finish almost exactly 3 years. So I started in the fall of 2018, and I'll be finishing in the spring of 2021. So about 3 years. But like I said, a lot of it has to do with I could only take so many courses at one time, so I knew it was going to take me a little bit longer than maybe most people, but I was okay with that to kind of handle both work and the course load. As far as how I supported myself, again, with me being an employee of the university, it's a little bit different. So I actually was able to take these courses for free, which is I'm very grateful for. And so it's been a really, you know, nice burden kind of taken off of my shoulders. But I do know that we have one of the best programs, and I wouldn't go take these courses if I didn't know how awesome our professors are, and that they would, you know, put in time to their classes and take care of me as a student as well if I ever had any questions. So I knew that it was worth it, whether it was free or not. So yeah, it was definitely a really good program to get involved in, that's for sure. And as far as kind of figuring out what grad program is right for students, I think one of the big things to kind of think about is definitely class size. So here in our MAC program, we have smaller class sizes, which I personally enjoy, just because that gives you more one-on-one time with the professor. You get to know the students in your program a little bit better as well, so you can go through the program with them. Also, I think another thing to keep in mind is the professor's experience or the variety of classes. And so, for instance, in our Masters of Communications program, there are a lot of different communication topics that we can learn about, whether that be interpersonal, organizational, instructional. Those are just a few of my favorites, but there's other ones too. And so it's really nice that we get that variety here in our program. Alrighty. And as far as, again, USI was a no-brainer to me. I guess I didn't mention, but I did go to undergrad here at USI as well, and I loved my experience, which is why going to USI for grad school was a no-brainer to me. I loved the small class sizes and that one-on-one experience with the professors, and I knew that they would have my back if I ever had any questions about the assignment or whatever it may be. So I might be a little biased because I do work here and I also went to undergrad here. I love USI and I love the classes that we offer and the programs that we offer. And honestly, I would recommend the Master of Arts in Communications program to anyone. So I definitely recommend looking into our grad programs. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is Kereston, Kereston .Hochgesang, Hochgesang, @gmail.com. I realize that is a mouthful, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I hope you guys get a lot of good information today.
I'm Dr. Lindsay Greer, and I teach with Dr. Rick in communication studies. So my graduate school experience was kind of a little roundabout as far as I took a couple of years off after undergraduate, and a large part of that was in undergraduate, I knew that I wanted to eventually pursue graduate study, but my undergraduate degree was very liberal arts, meaning that I had my major, which was media studies, but then I have a lot of interests. And so, I took courses in gender studies, I took courses in art, I took courses. I was basically like 3 credits short of like 3 different minors. So I was trying to figure out what exactly it was that I wanted to pursue. And it actually turned out to be a really good thing that I had taken those couple of years off, just to kind of get clear about what it was that I wanted to study, because initially I thought about creative writing and I ended up pursuing filmmaking and photography, which is a whole other thing that we'll get into in a second. So another way that my experience I think is a little bit different is that I actually first pursued and received an MFA, our Master's in Fine Arts, before going on to pursue and receive my PhD in performance studies. So when you think about the amount of time that not only degree, but outside of your coursework, how much time per week you're going to spend on work, and this is important as far as how you support yourself. You have to think about things such as, like, in the MFA, we were expected to have studio time outside of the courses that we were taking, and that was pretty much on us. So it was supposed to be like 20 to 30 hours was pretty much kind of like the part-time expectation. But then also in performance studies, we're expected to be in shows. And so that means that it's either your show or someone else's. You're doing the tech for that, you are performing in that. And so that roughly takes like 20 hours per week as well. And so that's time that you can't spend like having a part-time job or even like really doing things for your classes. So for both of the degrees, I, like Dr. Rick, had assistantships. And so when I was first applying for MFA, I didn't even realize that that was kind of an option. And so that's part of actually how I ended up at SIU, which is where I received both degrees. So Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. It was kind of random. Someone that I was working with was also applying to graduate school and told me that she was receiving a tuition waiver. And I was like, what is that? What is that magic? And so when I found out that you could actually be paid to go to graduate school, I was like, sign me up. And so, but then also actually like looking into the program, I realized that, oh, it's a good program because as I said, my undergrad major was in media studies, and it ended up that the person who had edited the book that we had used actually taught at SIU. And so I was like, okay, so it's a good program too, nice. Not just paying me, but they're actually good, cool. And of course, like in theory, you know, I was thinking, oh, this means I'll never have to take out student loans again, great. However, getting into the logistics of that, which I think is important, just as far as, you know, when you're thinking ahead and thinking about what you're signing up for financially. So I got the bill for student fees, which you're still expected to pay, even if your tuition is waived. And at the time it was like $600 and something, but now it's probably closer to 2,000, and that's on you. You're responsible for that. Also, as we started teaching, you don't get your first paycheck, like full paycheck, until around October. And so that kind of gave this wide stretch when it's like, I can either have no income or a place to live, or I can take out student loans. And so I chose that option. And I see people nodding, so I'm assuming that many other people kind of had that experience. And so what I'm trying to say is either you are independently wealthy, which if you are, congrats, nice life. You have some sort of trust fund, great. Or you end up taking out student loans, because also I know probably some of you are saying like, well, what about a job? Well, in graduate school, oftentimes it is really hard to have a job. And even if, you know, you have like a part-time job, and Dr. Rick can probably attest to this, you know, that still isn't that much. And so you're not really able to pay for things like your rent. And also, as I said, a lot of times there are all of these things outside of courses. So we were really, when I was asking about like, well, can you have a job? You know, the sort of unanimous answer was no, not if you kind of want to complete this and actually, you know, want to, and this is at least for like the MFA, no. But I'm like, and I even like tried, actually, I worked part-time at a co-op, you know, I was kind of like, tell me I can't work. But I really shouldn't have done that, because I actually ended up taking an extra semester because I did that. So basically your choice is loans or independent wealth, just to be clear. So, and not every program is like that, as Kereston said in her video. It's different here at USI. You're able to work, but also the tuition waiver, you know, you're not teaching on top of that. So that's a little bit about how I supported myself. Also jobs in the summer. My PhD program had opportunities to teach in the summer. The MFA didn't. And so I would do all sorts of random things. I worked at a coffee shop. I worked at the co-op. I don't know, made clay paws with kids at the art center and the student center, you know, so random ways to make money. So I really loved graduate school, you know, despite all of this stuff. And I think, and this is something that one of my professors said early on that I think really helped me frame my experience and make it really positive. She said, when else in life do you get the time and the amount of resources that you have at your disposal to do your own work? And that is certainly true. It's a time where you're able to pursue something that you presumably love, or at least are interested in, and you're able to really put most of your time, if not all of your time, towards that. So that's one thing. So the two programs themselves were very different, and sort of getting into why I did the PhD pretty early on when I was in the photography filmmaking. I lived with other graduate students in a house who just happened to be in communication studies. And I ended up going to an event, a performance studies event, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And so that's how I was kind of introduced to what eventually became my pursuit in life. I had heard of course, theater before. I knew what performance was, but kind of this idea of blending more scholarly work with the aesthetic performance studies, like that was just something that I didn't even know existed, and most people don't. And so it's often one of those majors that people come to kind of in the pursuit of something else. And so, yeah, I began taking courses during MFA in communication performance studies. And so that was, part interest, certainly. And also it was kind of like, as I continued to take courses, it was also strategic because I knew that I wanted to pursue my PhD and I wanted to sort of see what the culture was like. And I wanted to find people who could write me letters of recommendation. And so when I knew that's what I wanted to do, I kind of pursued that and did things that I knew would situate me to get into that program. So, because yeah, like I said, I sort of, jumped disciplines a little bit, which is again, how this is kind of roundabout. So one thing that I would say, as far as like your first year in grad school is, and this is, I think, kind of different from when I entered master's versus PhD. I think when you first like enter a grad program in your early to mid 20s, and I don't know, I think you kind of have this idea that you need to right away make yourself like a figure of note, or you think you know more than you do, and so trying to kind of like assert yourself in ways that maybe you're not ready to. And so I would encourage you to be an ethnographer and really watch and pay attention to how other people behave, and what the culture is, really, because I think that can also really make or break your graduate experience. I think another thing about entering programs, either right out of grad school or when you're still really young, is, as Dr. Rick already pointed out, there's definitely a different, the expectations and the sort of orientation to the work is very different, and some people aren't ready for that. Meaning, in undergraduate, I think the social aspect certainly plays a huge role. And I think sometimes people enter graduate school thinking that that's still going to be kind of the number one thing. But, and not to say that the social doesn't affect or play a role in it, but I think it's also, you need to be clear about, it's, for instance, it's not cool, you always have to do the reading. Bottom line of graduate school, like always do the reading. It's not cool to not do the reading, like there's no one who's going to be like, hey, you didn't do the reading. No, it's not cool. So if you're someone who doesn't like to do the reading, like don't apply. Because that's like, yeah, 80% really of the work. Yeah, I still have lots of other stuff, but I don't know, I feel like I've talked at length, so sorry if I ate up too much time, but that's kind of my experience. Be clear about why you're doing what you're doing. If it's just because you think, hey, undergrad was fun, I kind of just want to continue it, it's a different beast. And we can certainly talk more about that when we get to the question answer. But yeah, I'll pass it along to.
Yeah, so my name is Jason Callahan. I am an assistant professor in the criminal justice department. Maybe I was approached for this is because graduate school is still very close of an experience to me, having just finished last spring. So I'm not even a year with this under my belt. So it's still very new and very fresh to me. So hopefully this will be a good experience for those of you that are kind of weighing some of this stuff. So a little bit about myself. I, just like everyone else that's here on this panel, had kind of a unique and roundabout experience with graduate school. And I actually feel like I had two different separate careers with graduate school, because when I finished my undergraduate degree, I went straight into a master's program in criminal justice. It was in a school probably pretty comparable to USI in Southwest Virginia called Radford University. I got my criminal justice degree there. And something that I really liked about that and how it was kind of different from undergraduate was that, you're really kind of focusing, or you're streamlined a lot of your efforts into your interests, right? Like you go and you choose this program because it's something that you're really, really interested in. And not that there are parts of your undergraduate career that you're there because you do enjoy taking classes, but maybe some of these that you take, you wish that you hadn't, or preferred that you didn't. But when you get into graduate school, a lot of these choices are pretty evident that you're taking a lot of these classes because you have a lot of really firm interest in it. So you start to take a lot of ownership over it, right? You don't want to do poorly because this is something that you're really into, right? And kind of speaks on you that if you do poorly, it's because maybe you aren't putting the effort in. So there's definitely a little bit different motivations that you have between some of your graduate and undergraduate school experience. So when I was working on my master's degree, it was a 36 credit program. So it was about 2 years. I was taking 3 classes a semester. I actually finished up a little bit early because I took classes the summer, I guess the second summer or what it would have been going in. So I ended up actually finishing in a year and a half. Part of that was because halfway through graduate school, I got engaged, got married. So we're trying to speed up the, I guess, growing up process, right? And I started to apply to jobs around that time as well. And since my program was in criminal justice, it was going to be a law enforcement kind of oriented career that I was starting to go into. But even getting back from that and kind of speaking on some of the points that some of the other panelists have already brought up, when I was taking classes with my master's degree, that program itself didn't have funding the same way that they had some of the mentions we've had for tuition waivers and things like that. The funding opportunities that I had for that program, at least, was almost like working for a part-time job. And I had ended up working for the university, and I was an academic advisor for the criminal justice department and also for media studies. We were kind of lumped together. So I was there kind of speaking with upperclassmen, so juniors and seniors that were getting ready to finish off some of the last parts of their undergraduate program and trying to get them to fit and choose what they needed to still be able to fit all these requirements in so they could graduate on time. So it was a great way for me to kind of interact with the student base there, but also know the university a little bit better too, some of the policies that were there, get to know definitely the faculty members much better too, because I was there recommending students to take classes. So I wanted to make sure it was a good fit for them. So I really did get to know the faculty there really well. But it definitely was a different mindset. It wasn't, I was still paying full tuition. I was still paying for books, but I did have a job, and the tuition, this is back in the early mid 2000s. So tuition was a little bit cheaper maybe than it maybe is now. And I was able to do that, fortunately. So like I said, I finished that in about a year and a half. And then I went into the workforce. I actually had a career in law enforcement for about 11 years. And I got to a point, if you talk to anyone that's been in that profession around that time point, people are starting to figure out that you're either going to try to get promoted within this place that you work for, or maybe you're going to go in a different direction. Because you get to almost a halfway point with a career like that for you to get full pension, you have to put in 25 years. So you're kind of at a crossroads and trying to determine what you're going to do with the rest of your professional life. And around that time, I really recalled the experiences that I had when I was in graduate school, and that I was very close with the members of my cohort. There was about 6 of us that all started the program together. And it was like this constant friendship that you have with these individuals. You're taking all the same classes. Many of us work together with this assistantship. So we grew a very strong bond. And this is something that kind of resonated. I saw elements of this, like when I went to the police academy. You see some of this where you form some of these really strong relationships. And I really, really enjoyed that. But I also really enjoyed not just the relationship I had with my cohort members, but also the faculty. You got to see that you can interact with a lot of your professors almost like they're now part of your peers. You're not exactly there, right? There's a little bit of a gap, but you feel you can still talk with them much more like friends and peers, much more than it is kind of this division line that you have when you're an undergrad and you're addressing everyone by doctor or professor and things like that. And not that you're not still doing that, but you get a better relationship out of this. And again, you're getting a lot more ownership over your kind of what you're putting into this program. But something that I knew that I wanted to do in addition to some of these bonds that I saw, and wanted to also be able to pull some of the experience that I got in the workforce to kind of put forward to people that wanted to get into the same career that I did this, 10, 11 years before. And I knew that with my program itself, I didn't have a lot of working professionals that were there that were teaching in that program. And I still got a lot out of it, but I really wished that I had sort of that mentorship to prepare me a little bit more for the career that I was going to get involved in, right? So I was at the point in my career where I think I was starting to lean in that direction and really kind of was looking fondly back at my days at grad school, which is something almost no one ever says because you think of like all the hardships that you go into, but there's a lot of really great positive elements too. So I made the decision at that point, and fortunately my wife was very supportive of me and said, hey, if you want to go back to school, I'll support you. I know how miserable you were the first time at certain points of this, but if you want to do it, I'm more than happy to support you. So I actually only applied to one school for my PhD program, and it was where I got my undergraduate degree. Part of it was that one of my instructors ended up actually just retired about a year ago, that he taught at Virginia Tech for, geez, it was over 30 years. So I had him as an instructor when I was an undergrad. He actually ended up being my dissertation chair when I went through. So I had this connection. I stayed in touch with him. He told me a lot about the program, kind of what to expect. And I thought in my head, okay, this seems like a great fit. I know I have a little bit of an in. I know the area. I think this would be a good fit. Because of my experience that I had when I was a graduate student the first time and not really having expectations of funding because it essentially was a part-time job, I actually ended up having a full-time job before I applied to my PhD program. So I was working for the local police department there in town where the university was located. Unfortunately, I was working the midnight shift, so I was working overnight and then taking classes during the day, which for anyone that's ever done that, it's not the best situation to be in. But I was thinking, hey, this is better than me trying to go and get an assistantship because it's a part-time job. I already have a full-time job. I have benefits. And then I remember taking out a lot of credit for paying for just tuition and realizing the differences that were there between an assistantship where you could get tuition waivers and still get some type of a stipend, between that and actually paying full tuition, or even just paying for part-time, which I was at the time, and realized that for one, I'd be taking classes forever. I would be working forever and I would be incredibly in debt. So I actually was given the opportunity after my first year as a part-time student in my PhD program that I was approached and given funding through our department, which was great. So I guess I was able to quote unquote retire and then just take classes full time, which was great. Part of it's already been brought up is, with these tuition waivers, it's great that you're not paying full tuition. You're still paying student fees though. And the stipends that you're getting, while they're definitely good and they benefit you quite a bit, it's not paying for everything. So just like many of the other panelists that are here, I ended up taking a part-time job at our university library. I was a research assistant for members of my faculty, but also some other departments as well, in addition to being a TA for 2 or 3 classes a semester for my first couple of years. So in a sense, I was taking classes full-time. I was working a job through my department, and then I was taking another kind of part-time job, not my department, and another part-time job in another department, which seems like it's a ton, and it is, but when you're kind of going through all this, you realize that you have to make some sacrifices, right? You have to try to do the best you can to make some of these ends meet, realizing that, this is what a lot of people in your same position are also going through. And this isn't meant to be a tale to scare you or anything like that. This is more for the preparation for what you're going through, but also to remind yourself, you wanted to go to grad school, you had these kind of visions with what you want to do with that degree. This is kind of what you end up having to experience in some way or another. It's not always as glamorous as maybe it is when you're an undergrad, that you can, take 3 or 4 classes, have nothing to do on Friday at all, not have a job, you're able to go home, spend a lot of time with your friends, travel, all sorts of this stuff. You don't necessarily have some of those same opportunities when you are in grad school. Because even if you have a day off when you're not in class, you can bet that you have an enormous amount of reading, you're writing papers, you're doing research for faculty members, things like that. So there's always something to be done. But again, this is the ownership that you take with what you're doing, right? You're hopefully really invested with the classes that you're taking, the papers you're writing, the research you're doing, and it's something that's meaningful. So it's a ton of work, but it's also very rewarding at the same time. something that I really enjoyed, even though it was difficult. So, and something kind of speaking on that as well that really hasn't been brought up is that, it's really important to have a good support base when you're going through this, right? I mean, you are the student, you are the one that is you are the one that's taking these classes, you're doing the readings, you're going to class, you're participating, you're putting in the effort. But there's a lot that you have to deal with when you get home. There's a lot of stress that you don't want to just kind of keep inside with yourself. And as difficult as it is, because you don't necessarily have a lot of free time, try to find some outlet, some type of hobby that you can do that's not just school. You don't want that to overwhelm and be the only thing that you are. I was fortunate enough, pre-COVID, that there was a boxing gym that opened up a couple blocks away from where I lived, that I was going to probably 5 or 6 times a week, just for like an hour, going getting some good workouts in, meeting some people over there. But just having an outlet just to get out of the house, not think about school. And it's really beneficial because you'll see people that will get burned out when you're taking a lot of classes, you're looking at all these deadlines, and it can be very overwhelming. So just having something there or someone to talk to, something that's not just related to school, it helps enormously. So like I said, I was very lucky that my wife was so incredibly supportive throughout the entire process, and everything beyond that, just taking classes and being a grad student, but getting into the job market, applying to these teaching jobs, going to conferences, traveling, doing all these things. It's a lot that when you're filling out the information on your application, they don't really necessarily tell you, hey, by the way, you're probably going to travel to some conference, you're going to present some paper, you're going to stand up in front of a lot of academics that are going to seriously intimidate you, but you're going to do it. And it's all kind of part of the process. It's something that, it's, again, can be very overwhelming, but it can be very rewarding as well. You can make a lot of great connections with these types of things. So I guess that would be one of the words of the wise for me, is that, and like I said, something that we really haven't touched on, is try to find something that you can connect with outside of just your program or your discipline. And it can ground you. And I think it helps with the process, and it can also kind of rejuvenate you with kind of motivating you or keeping you on task with the things that you need to do. I will reiterate what has been said, that reading is a big deal. That is one thing that I think as undergraduates, you can kind of get away sometimes because a lot of your classes really are super lecture oriented. So there's a lot of reinforcement or kind of the materials that are duplicated that maybe if you don't read everything, it might be covered in class. But with graduate school, there's so much different readings that you're expected to know inside and out. I know with my preliminary exams that I had 2 that I had to take, and these are similar to the comprehensive exams that other universities will offer. And one of my 2 reading lists had, I think it was like 12 or so articles, which wasn't a big deal, but I also had, I think it was 42 books that were on this reading list that I was expected to know for my exam. And this was one exam. So I had another reading list to go on top of that. And these are things that you're expected to be, you're now considered to be the expert in your area. You need to know these things very well because it categorizes or characterizes your entire discipline. So you can't be expected to teach undergrads things that you have no knowledge about, right? So you need to know this information front to back, and it's a lot to take in. But if you stay motivated, you stay organized, which is another big thing, you can manage these things. It's just chipping away at it. Don't look at things from the big picture at the very end. You need to kind of do stuff incrementally to get there. Otherwise, it'll be incredibly overwhelming. So not to leave on a negative note or anything like that, but just realize, what your limits are, what you're good at and what you're bad at. So just realizing that there's a lot of challenges that are involved, but if you are dedicated to it, you can do it. This is something all of us, I know, felt probably at our first graduate class that we ever were in. You probably heard of the imposter syndrome, that you feel like you don't belong there. There's all these people that are so smart and you feel like they know so much more than you do, but you just have to give yourself the chance. You don't dismiss yourself. If you are dedicated to these things, you'll be able to do it. And I think all of us that are here that are speaking, Dean Beebe also with his experience, we've all been there. We did it. We overcame this. So if we can do it, anyone can do it. You just have to keep up with it. So there's my positive spin at the end.
I'm Sommet Jean de Dieu from Burkina Faso. I first had like a grad experience in Burkina Faso before coming to the US because I I had a bachelor in American literature and civilization, and then a master's degree in translation and interpretation, so translating from English to French and then French to English. And then I taught for like 8 to 9 years as an adjunct English teacher, like ESL teacher in Burkina. And from my teaching experience, I kind of actually saw some gaps in like the different like the equity in terms of access to quality education, because then we have only one teacher training school in Burkina Faso that is training teachers for all the country. And the capacity of that school is like really, really low because we can train more than 400 teachers a year. Then I mean, schools or mainly private schools started recruiting students from school like without any pedagogy training or like training on how to teach, and we're posting those teachers to school. And I started that way. So I kind of really find that, I mean, some of our teachers might not be giving the same quality of content to students compared to those who actually got training on how to teach and stuff. Then I applied for the Fulbright program on, getting more experience and more knowledge, much knowledge about teaching and learning. And then actually was admitted in USI and also Illinois State University, and going through the program, like the different site certification and then training that were offered. I kind of find that USI actually gave more chances than the Illinois State University. So I came actually in USI for in fall 2017 in the Master's Second Language Acquisition Policy and Culture program. So, well, the academic experience, I will first talk about like the professional experience I got, the academic one, and then the social one. Like for academic, I think it was a new academic culture for me because here it was a little bit different. Like we were still doing like quizzes and table tests and stuff. Like we barely have research projects that could be graded as like a test. So all was pretty much done in classroom. Like the teacher, like much control way of his teaching. The teacher will be giving you the content, then you just have to go and find a place, sit and read those content, and then come and sit for a test. And that's how it was. So like I wasn't really into research, like research methodology, going through review processes and stuff like. So when I came in the US, and then you have to read like many articles in a week, like you have to write many like journal article, like you have to make many reflections and stuff. At first it was a little bit challenging because like I didn't really master like the those APA style, MLA style, Chicago style. I mean, when they were saying like, I know style is like the way your clothes is sewed, like the way, but like style in writing, well, I didn't really have a good grasp of those. And I remember the very first time I was going frequently to the writing. I mean, there was a writing lab, I think, and so I was going there with my first production so that they could proofread and then give me some recommendation on how I could better actually improve it. And the other academic experience that I had that was good is that the program, the Master of Second Language Acquisitions and Policy and Culture program, gave me the opportunity to also take classes from other departments. This is something that we don't have here. Like if you are in math, then all you are doing will be math. If you are in science, all you're doing will be science. So like there's no possibility for someone who is in education to take classes from communication department or from public administration and stuff. So when I came and then I had that opportunity, I really was selecting courses that could actually build up my profile for the future, career that I was aiming for. Then I took classes in communication. I took classes in public administration, and I think that actually gave me a lot of skills that I'm actually marketing right now in Burkina Faso. As for social experience, social experience. I was an international student coming there with the Fulbright program, which is a cultural exchange program. So part of our mission was to also be sharing our cultural heritage, sharing our cultural knowledge with our host. So I got a lot of opportunities with the international office to be out there meeting people in Evansville, going for out trip, like meeting people outside Evansville. And that kind of gave me also another way of experiencing American cultures in general. And I really enjoy all of those experiences I had. Like we shared time with families and stuff, and that was really rewarding. It kind of broadened my understanding of American culture and took me some time away from the books, because we know America from books, we know America from movies and stuff. And then when you come and then you meet people on the field, then you kind of have a different other image of American, your different perspective about American. And then I think I had like a very rich social experience during my stay in the US and in Evansville. As for professional development, I think the program, the Master of Second Language Acquisition Policy and Culture program, does have like a lot of professional development opportunities. I remember through the graduate program, like we got some support to go to ACFL for like language teachers. I think it was I don't know if it is symposium or a forum, but actually we went to Nashville and then got to meet like some of the authors that we were reading during our language theories and then language assessment courses. Like we got to meet, some of those, Bill Van Patten, some of those big figures in second language acquisition theory. So, and we also got the opportunity, for example, to go to Yale University for another conference on leadership and then development in Africa. So we got like very, very good opportunities to actually develop ourselves professionally. The second thing is like I was able, when I explained my career goals to my advisor, she was able to actually help me. Dr. Jensen, she was here recently. I mean, they were able to actually help me develop like an internship program that was also credited. And then with that program, I was able to do like an internship in the Arc of Evansville, where I was actually recruited after my graduation to be, there as like trainer for day service specialist. I was coaching like day service specialists on the new curriculum goal that they adopted for individuals with disabilities. Well, I was taking 3 courses a semester. Like I said, I had like a program requirement. The Fulbright program actually required at least 6 credit hours. And personally, I also had like a personal pressure on myself because I left a wife behind and I wanted to come back home as quick as possible because, like, I got a baby 6 months after I was in the program. So I didn't want that baby to be able to speak without me being there. Then he would be questioning me, who are you? What are you doing here? What are you? Yeah. So I really wanted to finish earlier and then get here before he's able to speak. So yeah, I was taking 9 credit and all of the time, like I knew my limits when I was in the program. My first limit was that I didn't master like research approaches and stuff. So I was really reading a lot and also doing a lot of research. So YouTube was my best friend because whenever I was taught something, then I would take the big concept and then go on YouTube and also try, and also was able to get like a summary of some of those big content that I was reading, and that kind of helped me actually master easily the different things that I was taking from teachers. Well, how much work that involved? It really involved a lot of personal organization because then you have 3 classes and each class has like deadlines. Each class has like many articles and book chapters that you should read. I mean, they are not even aware that you are having 3 classes. So like, I mean, this is the schedule, this is the program, these are the assignment. So yeah, you have to really have self organization a certain way, making sure that you are not mixing things up, and then also be open to get to people. Like sometimes I will get to instructors like teachers and also get some explanation of things that I don't understand. And luckily, like most of the teachers that actually taught me were people who were open and then ready to actually support me. And I think that was a very big support. Like I said, support was like the instructors, and sometimes because I had like some students I was staying with who were also in the program, and they would already give me like heads up, like what I should prepare for each class, and that was really helpful. So I think the most important thing in being in the grad school is first knowing the reason why you are in the program, because then it will be challenging, it will be difficult in a certain way. So if you are not convinced that that is something that you want to do and that there is a purpose behind being in the grad program, then you might actually be able to quit at the first difficulty you meet. So if you are really determined, like you decide something you want to do with the grad program, then you can face any challenge that you come across in the program. For me, for example, the goal was to first get the research master degree and be able to go to a doctoral program with it. Because when I tried to actually solve the problem I identify in our education system, then I went to school and university. I wanted to do like a PhD, and they told me that I could not actually do a PhD with a professional master degree. Then I had to do like a research master, and that's why I actually applied for the Fulbright program. So yeah, you have to really have a goal, like have a reason. Don't go to grad school because like you don't have anything to do after a bachelor degree, but you have to do it because first there is an objective that you are trying to achieve. So yeah, after the program, I actually was able to actually I mean I was admitted in USI EDD program. Unfortunately, like there was a very tough financial question that I should actually sort out before deciding to stay and continue. And then finally, I decided to come back because like it was putting me and my family at risk if I had to transit directly to the doctoral program. Then I came and then applied again to other universities. Was also admitted to Illinois State University again for their teaching and learning program, where I actually am taking classes since fall 2020. That 2020. Well, and so the big challenge is like I'm taking classes sometimes from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. because of the time difference. But I completely enjoy it. Like I said, I have a goal that is behind it. So yeah, I find the strength actually to commit to it. For tuition, like I said, my program was fully funded. The USI experience, I was fully funded by the Fulbright program and also co-founded by USI. So I didn't really have to worry about tuition and stuff. But now I have to, because I have to like pay a lot of money every semester. So this is like generally what I could say. But if there is any question for anything to clarify, I can actually be I will be glad to actually come back.
Hello, my name is Sara, Christensen, Blair. This is my second year at USI, but my 15th year teaching in higher education. I have a little different path than everyone else. And the first thing is I didn't get into grad school right away. So like, I think there's this notion like, oh, I'm going to graduate school. Like, well, I didn't get in right away. I had a BA in art and I thought I was better than I was. So I was forced into time off, which was good, and ended up getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which is the professional level degree you need. You don't need it, but it's helpful to have when you think you're ready for grad school, but you're actually not. And so I didn't get in for 2 years. I didn't get into graduate school, and then I did, and I got into a fancy school, which MCAD, Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and then I also got into the University of North Dakota. Not as fancy, but my boyfriend at the time was going to law school there, so I went there. And I've been to a private school, an art school, and public school, state school, and I don't think there's much difference. It's really what you make of it. That would be one thing I would say. I think that there's a lot of hype put into like, you have to go to fancy schools. No, you have to go to good schools and make the best of it and make great connections. I think that's the thing that's the most important. So I went to University of North Dakota for my Master's of Fine Arts. And for those of you that don't know, the MFA is the terminal degree, which means it's the teaching degree for studio art, like digital art, not art history or art education, but those courses. And then I got my degree after 3 years. It's a 60 credit program, so it's a little more than a regular master's. We like to tell the regular master's people that anyway. And I was in higher ed. I got a job after a year and a half out of graduate school working as a graphic designer, and I got a job teaching assistant professor. I couldn't believe it. I was 27. I was really young, and I experienced a lot of ageism. And that was okay, because I still get it. I don't know, which is weird, but you know, and I really loved teaching, and I knew I also really loved making art, but I knew I didn't want to make art that I had to make a living off of, because I preferred art that was a little bit more edgy and conceptual, and no one's going to pay me enough money to live off of doing that. Plus, I kind of like call myself an art evangelical, and like I'm an evangelical artist, not like Christian, but like I just want to spread the great news of art. So that's always, I knew I wanted to teach, and that's the one way to do it. And I was teaching for a few years, and I felt in academia, the biggest thing that was holding me back, because I'm really organized artist, which is a weird quality. The thing that was holding me back was not having a doctoral level degree. So there's been some experimental PhD programs in the visual arts and DFAs and Doctor of Fine Arts. And I decided to, my husband and I both did, we both met in graduate school, broke up with a lawyer, married an artist. Oops, no. And it was a good decision. And he also teaches at USI, so don't tell him I said that. I really think that that I decided to go back to school. We both did. And one thing no one's talked about is we did a hybrid program, which means we did some in face-to-face and some distance. You don't necessarily have to leave wherever you are. And we both had tenure track teaching jobs, and we both wanted to get doctoral level degrees. So we found a program that was low residency. So we went to Europe in the summer for a month for 3 years. It was tough. And then we went to New York in the winters, and then we did the rest of the coursework online, but it was like this kind of situation. It was like online, like phones, and it was interesting, but I got to work with some great people, got to travel a lot. I never read so much in my life. And in the process, I ended up having 2 kids, which I didn't think I could have. So I worked full-time, had 2 kids, and did a PhD, which is why I'm almost Dr. Christensen Blair. I'm going to be finishing up. I'm defending my dissertation this semester, finally. I've been ABD, which means all but done. No, all but dissertation. For a few years, like 5, maybe 6. And they've been very patient with me, because I was very reproductive and productive during that time. My kid's about to be 12, so it's time to be done. And it's okay, because everyone has a different path. I'm really glad I did the PhD, but at the same time, I wish I'd never done it. And I don't know how to explain that, except to say it's more work than I ever imagined. And it's nothing like it's all theory-based. It was not at all practice-based, but it's made me a much better writer, a much better presenter, and I'm much more confident in my academic skills, which is something the MFA maybe didn't quite prepare me for. Not that there's anything wrong with an MFA, like I'm pro MFA all the way, but it was just that extra time and that extra, like the last presenter was talking about, like the different styles, and we just never had to get into that much as art students. So yeah, and I paid a lot of money for my PhD. I'm still paying for it. It's my second mortgage. My husband and I both went together $100,000 in debt for it, and it was worth it. And I know that sounds silly, but my master's, I taught right away, which is why I knew I wanted to teach. That was the early 2000s. That doesn't happen as often, and I just got really lucky and got a job. And I'm really glad to be at USI, because the academic rigor is higher than the last place I was at, but also there's so much more opportunities. So I think that I think we are positioned to become graduate students if you'd like. And there's no right way to do it. There's no like you have to go right after, or you have to wait till you're in your 30s, or you just kind of have to. There's never a bad time to go. There's never a good time to go, and you're never gonna have money. So you just have to seize it and take it. And it's gonna be really hard, but it's also really worth it.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kristin LaFollette. I'm an assistant professor in the English department, and I teach courses in our Master of Arts in English program. This is actually my second year at USI. I graduated with my PhD in May 2019, so I'm grateful for that, knowing what we know now about the pandemic and all that. But I'm grateful to be here at USI. My experience here has been wonderful so far, and our graduate programs are great. My experience in the Master of Arts in English program has been wonderful as well. Overall, my experience in grad school was fairly positive. I think everything everybody has said so far, I can relate to in some way, shape, or form. But one of the things that I loved most about grad school was just being able to focus my time and energy on classes that were actually geared toward my interests and my future career goals, although those kind of changed and developed over the years. I started out as a pre-med major as an undergrad, and almost finished that degree. In my final year, I kind of had an existential crisis and was like, I don't want to go to medical school, but I also don't know what I'm going to do now with a biology degree. If I finish this degree and graduate with it, what will I do after this? And so I had kind of a crisis moment where I'm like, I don't know what to do. Met with my advisor in the biology department, who just kind of asked me, what else are you interested in? And I said, well, I've always kind of liked writing. And she said, maybe you should just experiment with that and see how it goes. And so I took a couple writing classes. My parents were helping me pay for my undergraduate degree. They were very patient with me in this process because, like I said, I was almost finished with that biology degree at this point in time. But I took a few writing classes, realized that it was everything that I wanted to do. I became instantly obsessed and was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a writer now. And so I finished my English degree fairly quickly because I already had all of those like prerequisites and core classes out of the way. And so I finished an English degree in, I think, 3 semesters, like a year during the school year and then a semester during this summer. And so that all happened so fast, but I was like, I don't know how to make a living as a writer, essentially. So my my next step then was like, maybe I should get a master's degree and learn how to be a better writer, or maybe just spend a little bit of time trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. And as several people have alluded to in these presentations, I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing to do, because I went into it not knowing what the heck I wanted to do with the degree other than just be a writer. So yeah, it's good to have, I think, more of a solid plan, because it is such a sacrifice financially and with your time and everything. But I ended up going on to do a master's degree in creative writing at Indiana University. So I took 2 classes per semester. Those were 4 credit hours each, and then went on to, well, after I did my degree in creative writing, several mentors had told me kind of what Sara just talked about. An MFA or an MA in creative writing is a terminal degree. And so several mentors in my life were kind of like, you don't really need a PhD in creative writing to do that work or to teach. And so I decided to look into other areas that I was interested in, and ultimately decided to get a PhD in writing studies. And I did that at Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio. For that program, it was 3 classes a semester, 3 credit hours each, but that was only for the first 2 years. And then after you finish your coursework in those 2 years, then you move on to the dissertation phase, which can be any length of time that you want it to be, really. For me, my master's program was 2 years plus a summer session, and my doctoral program was 4 years. So my programs, the programs that I was in, they were fairly involved. They were all completely in person. My master's program classes were in the evenings, just to make them a little bit more accessible for working adults. And so I worked during the day and took classes in the evening. My first year in the program, I worked as, so my program wasn't funded, as several people have touched on this so far, but my master's program was not funded, which only adds to the, I should have really had more of an idea of where I wanted to go in terms of my career trajectory before I got into that. But it was not funded. So I had to take out student loans to pay for that. And then I had a job working at Office Max in the Copy Center. And then I also worked as a research assistant in the Master of Social Work program on my campus. So I was very busy all the time, but I think I ended up graduating from that program with about $20,000 in student loan debt. I didn't have any from my undergrad. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I'm grateful for that. But being a doctoral student, I think it was just like even stepped up a little bit more. I mean, it was definitely a full-time job. I was on campus all day, every day. I had to move. So I was living in Northern Indiana at the time, moved to Ohio for my doctoral program. And I lived about half an hour away from campus. So that complicated some things. Some semesters I would teach for my assistantship at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I wouldn't have class until 6 o'clock in the evening. And it wasn't worth it for me to drive all the way back home. I would just stay on campus. So I was there pretty much all the time. Because of my assistantship, I was either teaching or meeting with students or, you know, doing administrative things, studying, reading, all the things that everybody's already talked about so far. So as I mentioned, my master's program was not funded. I had several jobs. I worked as a nanny, a research assistant. I did photography. And then my second year, I had the opportunity to apply for a teaching assistantship, and I did that. And it didn't pay for my tuition, but it did give me some extra money to live on. And luckily, my doctoral program was funded, so I received a scholarship and a stipend. I taught typically about 1 to 2 classes a semester, or did some other administrative duties for the department, but the stipend was only about $600 every 2 weeks. So as a lot of other people have said, it's not really enough to live on, so you have to come up with some other way to make money and support yourself. So in my situation, I was married. I did have someone else who was contributing income to our family and helping to support us. So I didn't have to take out any student loans. I'm incredibly grateful for that. I taught classes at another university. I did photography. I worked as a nanny again for a family I knew in town. Taught summer classes, did placement reading for my department. And it was really tough. It was a lot of work. I also did a graduate certificate during this time, which is a 2-year program, but I did that while I was doing my PhD because I wanted to have like a secondary specialization in women's and gender studies. So it was a lot of work, but when you love what you're doing, it helps to make it a little bit more bearable. And I graduated with my doctorate having gained no more debt. So that was a really big deal for me. I think, I mean, other people have said this too, but it's really important to have a good support system. I think graduate school can be stressful. It's important to find a program with compassionate professors and people who care about their students' well-being and success. My master's program, I loved it. I got really close with the cohort of people that I went through that program with, and it was a great experience. I got into my doctoral program, and it was incredibly competitive and cutthroat. And I think that's something that people don't always realize as well, is that's the thing that you can encounter in doctoral programs, because people kind of think, well, we're all trying to get the same job and my research is more important, or I deserve this opportunity kind of thing. And you just have to you have to have a good support system outside of school to be able to get through that, especially for me in my program, that was a little bit rough. But overall, I had a great experience. I loved being a graduate student. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thanks.
My name is Rachel Herr, and I am not a professor. I actually I'm the member engagement manager at the Southwest Indiana Chamber here in the greater Evansville region. So I have had a little bit of a different career path than those who have spoken previously. I actually am a graduate of the Master of Public Administration program, and I graduated from Western Kentucky University with a minor in criminology and my major in sociology. I moved home to the Cincinnati area where I'm from and worked in a nonprofit where I did presentations to educate children about domestic and sexual violence. And after a year, I learned I'm very passionate about nonprofits. However, I am not someone who should be doing direct service work. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? I should go to grad school, right? Kind of like some of the other panelists have alluded to, that they kind of took a leap. And once they got there, thought, what did I do? So something that was attractive to me about USI was that I wanted to get my MPA. However, I liked that it had the nonprofit administration concentration. So that was something that I found attractive to the university. I also was very fortunate that I had a grad assistantship. I was a grad assistant in the Student Development Programs Office, which provided me with the opportunity to take 2 classes each semester and then a stipend as well. For me, some of the experiences that I had, as everybody has alluded to, the reading, I remember it was October 4th, I tried to quit grad school because I did not have an event like this that would help me manage my expectations. And I showed up and believed it was going to be like undergrad, where you sit and listen to a professor teach by a PowerPoint, you take tests, you take quizzes, and it was nothing like that. So I actually went to Dr. Trent Ingbers, who at the time was a new professor in my program, and said, I cannot do this. This is not right for me. And he fortunately talked me off the ledge, because had I thrown in the towel, I really would have regretted that. But some of the other panelists have alluded to, grad school it's a lot of reading. It's discussion based, it's application based. You know, you don't show up and expect to have a lecture like oftentimes you do in undergrad. It is much more you show up and you're prepared to be part of the lecture. You and your cohort are there to, help each other discuss and divulge the reading. And so that was something that I was not prepared for. So I cannot say that enough. That has been alluded to, but that reading is very important. And I myself, like I said, was caught off guard by that. Some of the experiences that I was able to participate in at USI that I felt very fortunate to have was that I did an internship, ironically, at the Chamber of Commerce in the department that I now work in, which I did some other things between when I graduated in 2015 and now, but I would not have the opportunity that I have now, my professional career, if it wasn't for that opportunity in grad school. I also had the opportunity to do a 2-week study abroad class. That was a regret that I had from my undergrad, was that I did not do a study abroad experience. And so I had the opportunity to go with Dr. Ingvers to China and take a public policy class, which was a really amazing experience. I also was able to take part in the MPA Society, which was an opportunity for me to kind of have that student involvement experience, because as has been alluded to, social aspect in graduate school and undergraduate school are very different. And that was something that I once again struggled with. I was very fortunate to be a part of a group who I had others my age and who also were doing graduate assistantships who were in a similar place. However, there were a bulk of our cohort that was non-traditional, worked full-time. So it was a very different experience. However, that was something that I find is to be very unique about grad school, is there are some people who are working on campus or who are doing grad assistantships, or others who are working full-time, taking one class at a time. So it really provides a very well-rounded experience, because you are having the opportunity to interact with people who are in very different circumstances, who are all working towards the same goal as you. So really just to kind of piggyback on some of the things that have been mentioned previously, definitely a support system is super important. Dr. Trent Ingvers for me has been a friend since I graduated. He's been foundational to my career, but he was also foundational to my graduate school experience. So find those mentors. They can be life-changing. Find your support system and definitely take advantage of the opportunity while you're there, because although it is very different than undergraduate, it's definitely something that provides you with opportunities that once it's done, it's done. And I am glad my experience is done. It was great, but similar to Jason, how he mentioned his wife said, you were miserable when you did that, but I guess if you want to go back, I'll let you go do it. My husband would probably say the same thing. So please enjoy it while it's there. Take advantage of it. It provides you with a lot of practical experience for your future career, for whatever that looks like. So I had a wonderful graduate experience. It was definitely challenging, but for me, I just looked at it as, once I get that piece of paper, it's something that no one can ever take away from me. So I too am welcome to any questions that anyone would have, and I would recommend it. It's definitely a leap of faith, but I think it's something that you may at times regret, but in the end, you will not. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to be here today.
So the questions that we do have, I noticed in the chat that someone was asking about tuition waivers, and Jessica Rick put in a really good explanation about those. So I'll just kind of go over what she said so that it's on record in the video. But she mentioned that you can get graduate school paid for in a couple of ways. So first, some companies may pay for their employees to go to school. So that's an option to look into. But each one of the companies that might do that, they have different policies, so make sure to check into that. Second, she said you can get an assistantship, and that's also something that Dr. Greer mentioned in the chat. So it could be a research assistant, teaching assistant. It, again, will vary for the program. So definitely look for those opportunities if you are a graduate student or looking to become one. And then she said, as many people have reiterated, you might have to take out those loans. So be prepared for that as an option. Just make sure you're talking to your professors along the way, and maybe they know something that isn't, listed in the books. So just keep in contact with them about ways to pay for that.
USI does offer assistantships. We don't have teaching assistantships, right? So part of USI's draw for undergrads is that you will learn from your professors. You're not learning from a TA. Right, so then that means our grad students don't have the TA opportunities. But we have assistantships, I know, in graduate studies, student, like the student organization group on campus, residence life. We have different assistantships on campus that you can apply for. And so, right, you probably work for whichever office about 20 hours a week, and then they'll cover, and I believe that's the type of assistantship Rachel had. So, right, so she can speak to that more. So USI does offer assistantships. And so if you know you want to go to USI, you can still get it paid, even though we don't have that traditional teaching assistantship. We do offer assistantships here. And I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
One thing that hasn't been mentioned for all of those students on here is your undergraduate faculty members and professors can really help you as you apply for graduate school. And think about where you want to go. Talk to your academic advisor, talk to people in your departments, because you'll be amazed how many of them have good ideas outside of the classroom, but also how they can help you get into programs because they know people at these programs. And they can write letters for you, recommendation letters and support letters. So, for example, I know a lot of people over the country. I know a lot of other people on this call do, and I have written letters on behalf of students to say, this person, is worthy of consideration for a graduate assistantship. And sometimes you might not get it in your first year, but you might get it in your second year. So it's worth sometimes taking a chance if you really want to go to a place to do that. And the connections that you have with your faculty here, who've all come from very, very strong PhD programs or programs with MFAs, use that. They will be happy. I know they will be happy to support you. And they know people all over the country. We're a network that's all over the country and international. And take advantage of that. People will go to bat for you to help you get into the program that you want to get into. Doing phone calls, doing emails, doing letters, whatever it takes. It's a little bit different to undergraduate. So I just wanted to add that.
One other thing too is you don't have to get a master's degree in what you did your undergrad in. And so I want to make sure that that's clear, right? So I teach in communication studies, but if you come to me and say, I think I want to do psychology, or I want to do student affairs, or public administration, we can help with that, right? It doesn't have to be our field, and we can still help you with the program search. And so I just want to make that clear too.
So this one was a kind of a fun one that someone asked in the chat, and maybe each person can give us just one best memory of graduate school that you had.
So we had a lot of visiting artists. In my PhD program was in aesthetics, philosophy, and art theory. So it was all these big continental philosophers, and we got to meet a bunch of artists, and we got to go to Venice to the Biennale. And I got to fangirl one of my favorite artists, Liam Gillick. And I even pretended to be a smoker for a few minutes just to go have an individual conversation with him. So yeah, that was one of my favorite experiences. And I got a selfie with him and I did the whole thing. So he's not super famous, but in my book, it was a good day. So
one of the things I wanted to mention but forgot is, and someone else talked about this, but some of the cool opportunities you get as a doctoral student is to be able to go to conferences and present at conferences. And they can be expensive and, ridiculously expensive, but it's a really good opportunity to travel, for one, because as a doctoral student, I wouldn't have had any other opportunities to do that because you don't really have money or any other resources to do that. But second, just like the networking opportunities that you're able to do at those conferences is incredible. The flagship conference in my field is the Conference on College Composition and Communication. And when I was a second year PhD student, it was in Portland, Oregon. And I got to go and spend a week there with some of my colleagues from Bowling Green and just meet people who I was reading in class and people who are a big deal in the field. And those experiences were just really incredible and invaluable for me as a doctoral student.
I'll tell you this, I met a lot, as our Professor Christensen Blair mentioned, she met famous people. You get to meet amazing people, scholars or artists in your field. But to me, the most amazing memory of graduate school, the best time was to sit around and talk with your cohort and with faculty about ideas. And to gain the confidence in yourself to express your ideas based on evidence. I'm a historian, and do original research and come up with original ideas that you have to defend. Because as an undergraduate, you basically learn to synthesize and regurgitate and paraphrase others. As a graduate student, you start to discover and make your own positions on things. And to have that confidence and that belief in yourself, even if what you first come up with is not that good, is part of the process. So my favorite memory really of graduate school in the United States was sitting around with people going through the same thing that I was, talking about really complicated theoretical things like Foucault or Derrida or whoever it was, and thinking, who on earth wrote this? And thinking, I could do better than that. And just being excited about ideas and coming up with your own thoughts and your positions based on evidence and the search, what I consider the search for truth. And I think the American higher education, particularly at the graduate school level, is second to none, that you can do that. People from all walks of life coming together, sharing ideas, and to get over, as Dr. Callahan said, get over that imposter syndrome. Once you're at graduate school, you're not an imposter. You're on a discovery to create knowledge. And I think that's just the most wonderful thing about graduate school. Plus, late night breakfast when you're trying to write your research paper at 3 in the morning and going to a diner and having a cup of coffee and some waffles. But that's a whole nother life that I don't want to get into. But I think it's just wonderful. So I commend it to everyone, and I hope you all decide to do it. Seriously.